Today I did a video that addressed a few questions and comments, as well as kind of go over some of the definitions and some explanations pertaining to funding and some corporate actions that we've taken in the past or any company could take. So what I wanted to also discuss was manufacturing, because I think there's some confusion, maybe not as confusion, but there's just some people don't understand the process with manufacturing, right? So we're going to take a look at a couple of the products that we manufacture. Socks would be the obvious one, but we'll go and take a look at Clearview as well as Bacter's device, the Novi device, and a few other devices. So when we're looking at producing a product and delivering it to market, there are a lot of things that go into that. It's not as simple as saying, make a sock and sell it into the market. And I think this will help people understand some of the timing questions. A lot of people were asking, how much longer will it be to do this? How much longer, or why does it take so long to do X, Y, Z or deliver a product? So when you're looking at developing a sock, we did it relatively quickly. And I say relatively quickly because that was about a year in development for just the sports sock, or what we refer to as the athletic sock. Going into the HP line, there were some changes that we made. So let's take a look at the sock, right? The sock, you have to take a look at the sizing. That sock will fit size 8 through 12. That was a design and engineering obstacle that had to be overcome. So when you wash it, it'll shrink back to fit the smaller size foot. Then we also had to have the process, or the manufacturing process, in place to take the staple fiber and then covalently bond the silver. It's not just silver by itself. With the socks or any textiles that you're going to wear, in order to promote wicking, you have to encapsulate. It's a polymer encapsulation on the silver. And then that gets covalently bonded to the staple fiber, the little fibers, and then it gets woven into a yarn, and then you make the sock. These are all processes that are not readily available, or were not readily available, widely available, I should say. There's a few manufacturers that were doing it. Many were dipping it in a solution, not really being accurate with the parts per million count. This is something that we're very specific on with our socks, so that as you wash the sock, every time it's washed, there's going to be some leaching of that material, and there's a minimum. So we're way above the minimum, which is around 500 parts per million, where we are in excess of 880. And this is important because it sustains the efficacy of the sock. So these are all things that we focus on, so for quality, but also the lifespan of the sock. And then you have to have durability testing. We also wash the socks beyond mil spec. I won't get into the specifics, but there are, when someone says the lifetime of a garment, you're talking about a cycle of about 20 washes. Excuse me. Mil spec's about 50. We're in excess of 200. So we're well beyond what would typically be the lifespan of a particular garment. In my opinion, and those here, the lifespan should not be 20 washes. That's less than a year, right? So most people are going to wash their socks more than 20 times in a year. So this is the approach we took just with the socks. So you say, okay, well, now you have the sock. It took a year. How long does it take to push it out the door? So now we got it in packaging. Packaging is another thing. How are we going to mail this out? What is the socks going to be bundled in? What will be the packaging? And then also, and when I say packaging, you also have to have all of the content that's going to be printed and or typed so that it makes sense on the packaging, but it's also something that people will read and it's helpful. Then we have those insert cards for those of you who purchased, gives you the washing or laundering instructions. And then there's a few other inserts that we put in there. There's some decal stickers, bands, and so forth. But we also have the mailers that it goes in. This takes time to get done. Someone has to design that card, and then it has to be machine folded so it'll fit around the sock. That's just the sports sock, right? Now with the HP line, those come in a foam insert that's in a box. That box has a magnetic closure. There's a lot of design that went into that box for those who have seen it. There's a QRC code that links to a website. Now that box goes inside a shipping box, and that box had to be designed. These are not things that take days or even weeks. It took months to get a package that would meet my standards. And we had many examples. We would ship them. We had a couple. It was 3 or 4. I believe it was 3. The first batch was 3. Then there was another one, so that would be 4 total prototype boxes that we shipped from offices in Tampa all the way to Nevada, and then had them shipped back in different types of packaging. And they all came back almost completely destroyed. So that wasn't acceptable. And we had retained professional manufacturers for this. This is what they do. They make boxes. They make shipping boxes, and they were all substandard. So the answer to that was have our engineers and our designers design the box, and then we got it right the first time. They did a fantastic job, like they do on everything else, and it met the standards. But you're talking about something that took several months to work through, because someone makes a design, you look at it, it's a rendering or an image, and then you have to have a physical box in your hand so that we can approve it and we can ship it and test it. In order for that to happen, they have to design it, you have to approve it, they manufacture it, they send it to you. This can take a couple of months in some cases, and it's painful when you get the wrong product or the wrong result, right? So ultimately, we should have just done it ourselves. So that was a lesson learned. Now, you say, fine, you get all that done. So what's the holdup? Well, you've allocated capital and you've invested in the design of the product. You've allocated capital and invested in the design of the packaging. Well, now you have to design in the manufacturing process. You have to design in the market. You have to invest in the marketing. This takes time. This takes dollars. So you say, okay, that's fine. It's one product, but we don't develop just one product. So now I have to make decisions based off of where we allocate capital. What is the most efficient use of corporate funds that will bring us the greatest return? So that's why we take a look at a couple of things. A good example would be the rifle. The cost or COGS, cost of goods and services on that particular product had a very low margin and had a large dollar output to get started. So, or start cost. So something like that was around $980 cost, with the highest bracket or highest tier that the government could pay, which is around $1,300. Very low margin. First 1,000 rifles would have, you do the math, it's $1 million. What could I have allocated those 7 figures to, or less, right, and have a bigger return? These are all the things that you have to weigh in. These are all the data points. These are all the metrics you have to consider. And I know many of you don't see that or understand that, because in many cases, most companies don't talk about this. And in our case, I want to make sure that everyone is educated and understands why we do what we do. So in that case, there was a political climate where producing firearms might not have been the best choice for us. God forbid something happened. We were a small company, and it wouldn't have been prudent to do so, especially with allocating that level of capital. So the stocks were a better alternative, lower initial investment, greater return. And another example, obviously, when we licensed out to TDC, or the Dreaming Company, with Hygeia Skin, that had an initial upfront cost. Yes, it was obviously a little higher than some of the other products that we could have launched, but the return on that was significant. Now, let's talk about ongoing costs. It's not just about manufacturing a specific product. You have ongoing costs with further development, obviously, but also with marketing. I'll give you an example with Hygeia Skin. Just to bring an outside resource force that works in tandem with some of the larger companies, top, Fortune 500 companies, you're talking about an initial investment of close to $150,000 with a monthly investment, $40,000 to $50,000, just to get started, right? But it's worth it because we're expanding our marketing base. And so how do we calculate that return? Well, we're building up a brand, starting with Hygeia Skin. That is going to translate to the Hygeia sports line, as well as the bedding line, Hygeia Kids, and also the boxers for the men's boxers, and a few other things that we're looking at getting into. So that initial investment, while it may seem high, initial capital cost is significant. It is amortized across the entire brand or a suite of products within that brand. So these are things that we have to take into consideration. Now, when we look at manufacturing and I have the crutch back there, you have to look at a couple of different things. So something like the crutch is significant, right? Because there's several variations or iterations of that. The first one was done strictly out of polycarbonate. So you have to purchase those pellets. You have to have it manufactured as injection molding. Initially, we had the manufacturing done in our facility in Texas with the injection molding devices. So you purchase those. They're small pellets. They're polycarbonate pellets. They're injected, right? This is injection molding into this tooling. Now, this tooling is very expensive. Someone has to design the tooling. We usually design the tooling, and then we contract out to have that tooling made. There's a couple of places in the world that do a pretty good job. At the time, we had to do overseas because the costs were significantly less. So if we did it in the United States at that time, that tooling for the few components on the crutch, no, that was Clearview. So on Clearview, those components were about $150,000 for that small tooling. Overseas in Asia, it cost us about $50,000. So significant savings to do that, even with having it shipped here. The other issue was the quality of the tooling was superior. That's not the case now. We have some tooling that's getting done not only in-house, but with some other manufacturers here. Costs have come down, and the quality has significantly gone up. So these are things they have to take into consideration. It's similar to like the 510K. We can, in many instances, do a 510K here and this is not specific to medical devices, but when you're looking at some of the other areas we're getting into, especially with pharmaceuticals, when you're looking at doing a 510K, you're looking at an 18 to 24 month process here in the United States, and about a tune of about $5 million. You can do it overseas in less than 18 months, and that cost is hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it's significantly less. In the United States, I think the average about $2 to $5 million. I'll say that's a fair range, depending on what it is you're looking to test and get approved. So there are many things you have to be aware of in the manufacturing, and then there's also the timing. So I thought a video that would discuss some of those manufacturing processes would be helpful. So what do we do? So we have CNC machines. They are machines that will go through with a drill bit head, and they'll cut out the metal or polycarbonate, many materials, but I'm getting specifics. It cuts many materials. There's different size machines. Some of those machines could be very small or desktop. I think we have a few of those as well. They're not very expensive. And then you have the larger industrial machines, which is an area that we've started to migrate towards, and those machines go into the six-figure range, right? In many cases, depending on what level of industry, they can just exponentially go up. So there's a lot of things that you can do with those machines. So we make our own tooling with those machines. How do we make the tooling? You can make the tooling out of steel. You can make the tooling out of certain polycarbonate for vacuum forming, which is what we did with NextCast. So at NextCast, we assisted them in coming up with a design and some technology solutions by creating the first test strip. So what it was, instead of a cast, we had these little strips, and they were flexible. You hit the button, and then they would cure and turn hard. That was just a proof of concept, proof of technology as a demonstrator to some retailers. So we had to create tooling to mold all of that polycarbonate, or in many cases, vacuum forming. So what's vacuum forming? So you create the tool, you put in the resin, in some cases, Kevlar, carbon fiber, graphene weave within the carbon fiber, and even polycarbonate. You put that in, it creates a vacuum, pulls everything down into the mold, and then that shape cures in that particular position. These processes to design, then make the tool so that you can make the product, and then go through the steps to make those micro adjustments. So you make the tooling, and then you do a test run, and some things might be off. The tolerances might not be within the spec for that. So Novi is a good example, as well as NextCast. So the first couple of units go through. I think we did something like a run of 25, and the idea is these things just snap into place. That did not happen first run. everything, we're probably about 95% there. The guys are really good at what they do, and certain adjustments had to be made. So then we do this. Now this is prototype tooling. So this is not tooling designed to push out hundreds of thousands of parts. This is, a couple hundred parts, it's fine. After that, the tooling becomes a little compromised, the tolerances aren't within spec, and you've got to go to your production tooling. So we save costs by making our own tooling in-house for prototyping. And then you can go into the commercial tooling. Now, when it goes into commercial tooling, you need specific equipment, you need specific processes in place to deliver these, to receive these raw materials, deliver them to be manufactured, and then ship them out. So that's something that we subcontract out. Now, that takes time. Tooling, these are very precise tools, especially when you talk about Clearview. These, and I understand it's a polycarbonate or medical grade polycarbonate, but the tolerances, you're talking about microns. These are, in worst case scenario, within millimeters. But many cases, especially with the Aegis pin, the original pins that we were using in Clearview, these things have to be designed in a highly accurate and in a very particular environment, by the way, as well. So these are all things that slow down the process. So I know sometimes it can seem like it's taking longer than you might like. It's always going to take longer than I like. I'm a little impatient when it comes to getting things out the door and delivering them. But those processes take time. And now we have to go back to the financial component, because this is a big one, right? If you try to, in my opinion, if you try to do 100 things at once, you're going to do nothing well. You do one thing at a time, you deliver one product, you have the opportunity there to do something significant and do it very well. With Hygieia socks, for those who weren't around, what we did is we launched the socks for several months with a marketing campaign, and we changed that marketing campaign, or boosted the marketing company we later purchased. And we were looking at demographics, where to allocate funds, in what marketing mediums or platforms, and what was the greatest return. And what Boost was able to do by doing this is we figured out, which carried over to Hygieia Skin, by the way, how to get the greatest return on dollars invested. So right now, the average company will give you a quote if they do your marketing, your e-commerce marketing, online marketing. They'll say for every dollar spent, you'll get $2.25 back. Well, what Boost was able to do was for every dollar spent on advertising and marketing, we were getting $4 back, which no one else was doing, which was a significant lead into why we purchased them, right? They were using targeted marketing based off of proprietary algorithms and processes, and this proved to be a pretty significant find. So with Hygieia Skin, they exacted the same process. Things had to be tweaked. Obviously, demographics are a little bit different. If you're selling a men's sock, Hygieia Skin, which is geared more towards women, depending on the product, it's a different product. Different products would appeal to different age brackets and different segments. So those things had to be adjusted. But the basic way of marketing and targeting, creating funnels, and presenting a path to follow within a website, that was all done and remains the same. I'm sure they're always improving. I'm not a part of their daily operations. We do calls daily. I'm aware of everything that goes on within all subsidiaries because I speak to everyone on a daily basis. However, these things the fundamentals have been in place for quite some time. This is where you start getting into some of the lag that people might discuss. So why aren't the other socks out? Why is the pillow not out? That was another one I was asked. Believe me, everyone here wants that pillow out. They love the pillow. And the boxers, I think it will be a significant hit. Why are you not putting out the sports line for women? And when are you going to put out Hygieia Kids? So all of those items, those are great questions, and I understand that everybody wants everything out, and you want to, many different SKUs, we refer to them as SKUs or products, but it's not it's not necessarily fiscally prudent to launch all these things at once. You're talking about a lot of inventory that has to come in. That creates an issue with management, not only for inventory management, but also for space management, shipping or fulfillment, and then the folks that would go ahead and facilitate that for us. We have to hire and bring it out. So there are limitations, and those limitations revolve a lot around capital and capital allocation. So if you have to hire a suite of people to do that, that cost has to be weighed into delivering that product to the public, right? So we are in the process of getting all of this put in place over time. I think I've said previously, the issue for us is this year's focused on structure and executing on a plan to uplist the company. And as many have surmised, and I think we've touched a little bit, we're looking at going after some institutional funding to expand the company, and that's already in process. So as far as manufacturing is concerned, I thought it just might be helpful to do a quick video on what it takes to manufacture any product, not just in industry, but also specific to us. And this is not a how-to video. That'd have to be a suite of videos. But when you're looking at manufacturing all of the components that go into delivering just one single product, I want everyone to understand that it's not just the design of that one product. It's the packaging, it's the marketing, it's the fulfillment, it's the inventory management, it's the human capital required to deliver on that particular product or sale at a time. These are all things that go into it, and that's an expense. If you do 10 things, like I said previously, it's going to get very, very expensive very quickly. So we're focused now on the audits, the S1, the uplist, and some other things that we'll talk about in the future. We're also getting all of the companies up to speed so that there's a minimum monthly revenue that they're all hitting. It's going to take some time, but we're looking at, I'm not going to get into what that number is, what I'm looking for from everyone, but there's a minimum number that I'm looking for to get everyone up to over the next 12 to 18 months. I think we'll hit those targets. Some companies will exceed that, I'm sure, very quickly or in short order. But for manufacturing, understand we do intend to put all these other items out. It's going to take some time. And then there's also, I didn't touch on some of the legal issues or the regulatory issues when you're talking about, especially with silver. That's listed by the EPA as a pesticide. So you've got to educate them on why we're not using this as a pesticide. And then we also have to go through some other issues when you say it's going to kill some of these other pathogens, virus, fungus, and so forth. A couple of questions I got. I guess someone saw years ago, well, I would say years ago, probably about a year ago, we had touched on some of the privacy curtains for hospitals. That's not something we stopped. Again, this is more about what we can do at one thing at a time. So hopefully this helped explain some of that. There's quite a bit to discuss when it comes to manufacturing. If that's something people are really interested in, we can go, a deeper dive into sourcing raw materials. Are these materials sustainable? Where do these materials come from? How is when you're processing silver or you're extracting silver, what is that process, and what standards are you meeting? You can, for us, it's very important where we get the silver, because that can be detrimental to the environment when you're mining silver. So you have to have the right manufacturer or supplier that's being responsible in providing you with this, or when they're mining the product and providing you with the raw materials. And that's something that we do across the board in every company. That's something everyone here is pretty passionate about. Down the road, we're looking at meeting certain certifications and standards. That's more of an investment of time than money. And we have, it's an all hands on deck now with the audits, and again, some of the filings and a few other things we're working on. But we can, if people are interested, we can do a deeper dive in that. I think we're going to be doing some videos in the future that highlight where we source things from and how we move forward with manufacturing. And then also, you have to take into consideration the logistics. Logistics are huge. Getting something from out of the country into the country, you have to go through customs. There's a whole process depending on what it is. I can tell you right now, the process to bring finished products in is completely different than raw materials. You'd be surprised what it takes to get a Debenone into the country. I know HBC is one of the largest suppliers in the country, and even outside this country, especially with institutions, educational institutions for higher learning, colleges, universities that are doing research. We're a big supplier of that. And to get that in, we have to get through a process with Department of Homeland Security as well as customs. So there's a whole process, and that can take time. We just had a shipment, I should say, held up for 40 days. That's not typical. It got really bad during the pandemic, as you can imagine, especially on the West Coast, which is why we had to ship. We switched everything from bringing things in through the West Coast. We did a lot of air freight. That became more expensive, but we had timelines we had to meet. And then, of course, shipping into Florida as well as Texas. West Coast was shut down a little bit longer, and they had much more stringent restrictions, and we couldn't wait any longer, or else it would have affected business. So there are many things that go into manufacturing, is the point, and hopefully this will help clarify some of why we haven't put forth the other products. As far as someone had asked earlier, as far as why we have them listed on the site, it's because we're building the back end. So if something's listed, I know it can be a little frustrating, but the back end is very important on not just the processing of payment, but also the fulfillment. Okay, so there's many ways to fulfill. Hygieia is staged in several parts of the country through third-party fulfillment, as well as local. The Hygieia socks, that's another thing that's staged across the country, as well as local or internally, because you want to be able to deliver these products within a couple of days. 2-day shipping is expected, and you want to meet industry standards. So these are all things that have to go into that, and that all takes time. So hopefully this helped. I think we'll be doing on Friday another update video. I have a few things that I should have answers. I'll have some answers tomorrow, so hopefully the Friday video will be a little more comprehensive. And then next week, I've got a couple of more videos I wanted to get done. I just want to get everybody caught up to speed. I want to make sure we speak the same language with the appropriate expectations, and everyone understands the plan moving forward. So hope this video helped, and I look forward to talking to you in 2 days. Thank you.